The twin Cowboy's secret hold. Story. The rope burned against my palms as I secured the last bale of hay, sweat dripping down my temple in the oppressive Texas heat. I didn't hear them approach. I never did. The Cooper twins moved like shadows across their own land, silent and commanding. When Ethan's hand landed on my shoulder, I flinched so hard the rope slipped from my grip. "Easy, Jamie," he murmured, his voice low and smooth as whiskey. Behind him, his identical twin brother Mason leaned against the barn door, arms crossed, watching me with those piercing green eyes that seemed to see straight through my skin. "We need to talk to you about something. Now." My heart hammered against my ribs. In the 6 months I'd worked at the Cooper Ranch, I'd learned that when both twins summon you together, it meant something serious, something that would change everything. I wiped my palms on my jeans, trying to still the trembling that had nothing to do with exhaustion and everything to do with the way they were looking at me. Like I was something they'd been hunting, and they'd finally cornered their prey. I'd arrived at the Cooper Ranch in early spring, running from a life that had shattered into 1,000 irreparable pieces. My addiction to painkillers had cost me everything: my college scholarship, my family's trust, the future I'd mapped out since childhood. Rehab had cleared the drugs from my system, but it hadn't erased the shame that clung to me like a second skin. When I saw the ad for a stable hand position that included room and board, I jumped at it with the desperation of a drowning man reaching for driftwood. The Cooper twins had hired me on the spot, barely glancing at my resume before Ethan extended his hand and Mason showed me to the small cabin behind the main house. "Everyone deserves a second chance," Ethan had said, and something in his tone made me believe he understood what it meant to need one. That first night, lying in the narrow bed that smelled of cedar and leather, I'd promised myself I would prove worthy of their faith. I would work harder than anyone. I would never give them a reason to regret taking a chance on a broken 23-year-old, with track marks still fatting on his arms. What I hadn't expected was how completely the twins would consume my thoughts, my days, my very existence. Ethan and Mason Cooper were 28, identical in appearance but distinct in manner. Ethan was the smooth talker, the one who handled business negotiations and charmed feed suppliers into better deals. Mason was quieter, intense, his presence filling a room without him uttering a word. Together, they ran the most successful cattle operation in 3 counties, and they did it with an efficiency that bordered on telepathic. They were also the most captivating men I'd ever encountered, and that terrified me more than any craving ever had. I'd known I was gay since high school, had even dated a few guys in college before everything fell apart. But the twins stirred something in me that felt dangerous, addictive in its own right, a hunger I couldn't afford to feed. So I kept my head down, did my work, and tried to ignore the way my pulse quickened whenever one of them stood too close, whenever their hands brushed mine as we worked side by side, mending fences or breaking in a new horse. Now, standing in the barn with both of them watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle, I felt that familiar panic rising in my chest. Had they noticed the way I looked at them? Had I somehow betrayed myself with a lingering glance or an unguarded expression? "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice rougher than I intended. "Did I do something?" Mason pushed off from the doorframe and walked toward me with that predatory grace he possessed. He stopped close enough that I could smell his cologne, cedar, and something darker, more primal. "You've been having nightmares again," he said. "It wasn't a question. We can hear you from the main house, crying out in your sleep." Heat flooded my face. The nightmares had returned 3 nights ago, vivid and brutal, memories of the worst days of my addiction mixed with fever dream imagery that left me gasping and disoriented. I'd hoped the cabin was far enough away that no one would hear. I should have known better. The twins noticed everything. "I'm sorry," I stammered. "I didn't mean to disturb you. I can sleep in the truck if it's a problem." "Don't be stupid," Ethan said, but his tone was gentle. He moved to my other side, and suddenly I was flanked by them, surrounded by their presence. "We're not upset, Jamie. We're concerned. You've been pushing yourself too hard, working 14-hour days, barely eating. We've watched you drop 10 pounds in the last month. And when one of us asks if you're okay," Mason continued, "you smile and deflect like your life depends on it, like you're terrified we'll see what's really going on inside your head." I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to bolt from the barn, get in my rusted Chevy, and drive until Texas was nothing but a memory in my rearview mirror. But my feet stayed rooted to the hay-strewn floor, held in place by the weight of their concern and something else, something that felt like being seen for the first time in my life. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just adjusting, new place, new routine, it takes time." Ethan reached out and gently turned my face toward his. His touch was fire against my skin, and I had to suppress a shudder. "You're a terrible liar," he said softly, "and you don't have to be fine, not here, not with us." Mason's hand settled on my lower back, warm and steady. "We take care of what's ours, Jamie, and whether you realize it yet or not, you're ours now. You belong here." The possessiveness in his words should have alarmed me. Instead, something inside me, something that had been clenched tight for months, maybe years, began to unfurl. I felt tears prick at my eyes, and I blinked them back furiously. I couldn't break down in front of them, couldn't show them how desperately I needed to hear those exact words. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Why do you care so much?" The twins exchanged a look over my head, one of those wordless communications that pass between them constantly. Then Ethan smiled, and it was the saddest, most tender expression I'd ever seen on his face. "Come up to the house," he said. "We'll make dinner, open some wine, and we'll talk, really talk. No more pretending everything's okay when it's not. No more performing for us. Deal?" I should have said no. Should have maintained the careful distance I'd constructed between employer and employee, between the men I worked for and the men I'd started dreaming about when my nightmares finally released me. But I was so tired of carrying everything alone, so exhausted from holding myself together with nothing but willpower and stubborn pride. "Okay," I breathed, "deal." The main house was everything my cabin wasn't, spacious and warm, filled with comfortable furniture and photographs spanning generations of Coopers. While Mason poured wine and Ethan started dinner, I wandered the living room, studying the images. There were pictures of the twins as boys, gap-toothed and sunburned, holding fishing rods and ribbons from cattle shows. Photos of them in high school, football jerseys and cowboy hats at rodeos. And then more recent images. The two of them at what looked like pride parades, rainbow flags draped over their shoulders, arms around each other and around other men I didn't recognize. "We came out when we were 19, Ethan said from behind me. I turned to find him holding 2 glasses of red wine, his expression unreadable. "Caused a minor scandal in town. Lost some friends, some business at first. Our parents took it hard, but they came around eventually before they passed." Mason emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. "We learned early that pretending to be something we're not was worse than any judgment we might face. Life's too short to spend it hiding." He was looking at me as he said it, and I felt stripped bare under that gaze. They knew. Somehow, they'd figured out my secret, the one I'd been so careful to keep locked away. The wine glass trembled in my hand as I took it from Ethan. "I'm not hiding anything," I said, but the words came out defensive, brittle. "Aren't you?" Mason challenged gently. "Jamie, we've watched you flinch every time we get close. Seen the way you look at us when you think we're not paying attention. You're so busy trying to be the perfect employee, the grateful charity case, that you've forgotten you're allowed to be human, allowed to want things." "I want to keep this job," I said, my voice rising with panic. "I need this job. I can't mess this up, I can't. If I lose this, I have nowhere else to go. Don't you understand that?" Ethan set his wine down and moved closer. His movement slow and deliberate, like he was approaching a spooked horse. "You're not going to lose this job," he said firmly. Not because you're honest with us, not because you let us see who you really are. You don't know who I really am, I shot back. You don't know what I've done, what I'm capable of when everything goes wrong. I destroyed my entire life in the span of 6 months. I hurt people who loved me. I stole from my own mother to buy pills. I'm not someone worth caring about. The words hung in the air between us, ugly and true. I'd said them out loud for the first time, and the shame of it threatened to buckle my knees. Mason was there instantly, his hands gripping my shoulders, holding me upright. "Look at me," he commanded, and the authority in his voice left no room for disobedience. I raised my eyes to his. "Addiction is a disease, not a moral failing. You got sick and you got help. You're in recovery. That takes more strength than most people will ever have to summon. And the fact that you made mistakes doesn't mean you don't deserve kindness," Ethan added, moving to stand beside his brother. "Doesn't mean you don't deserve care or friendship or," he paused, something flickering in his expression, "or whatever else you might want." The implication in his words made my breath catch. I searched both their faces, looking for signs I was misreading the situation, that my desperate loneliness was making me imagine things that weren't there. But they were both watching me with the same intense focus, the same barely restrained hunger I felt clawing at my own chest. "I don't understand what's happening right now," I admitted, my voice small. "What do you want from me?" "Everything," Mason said simply. "We want you to stop pretending, stop performing, stop treating yourself like you're on probation for the crime of being imperfect. And if you can't do that yet," Ethan continued, "then just have dinner with us. Let us feed you, let us talk to you like you're a person we value, not just someone who works our land." It was the most reasonable request in the world, and yet it felt impossibly difficult. But the alternative was walking back to my cabin, spending another night alone with my spiraling thoughts and eventual nightmares. At least here, surrounded by their warmth and attention, I might find a few hours of peace. "Okay," I said again, and let them guide me to the kitchen table. Dinner was a revelation. Ethan had made pot roast with vegetables, comfort food that filled the house with rich, savory scents. As we ate, the conversation flowed more naturally than I'd expected. They asked about my life before the ranch, not the addiction, but the parts that had made me who I was. My love of classic literature. My brief stint as a college athlete before I'd blown out my knee and gotten prescribed the painkillers that would eventually derail everything. My complicated relationship with my younger sister, who'd stopped speaking to me after I'd missed her high school graduation because I'd been too high to drive. I found myself talking more than I had in months, the wine and their genuine interest loosening my tongue. They listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions, sharing their own stories in return. Mason had wanted to be a veterinarian before deciding the ranch was his true calling. Ethan had spent 2 years in Austin trying to make it as a musician before admitting his heart was in the land their family had worked for 4 generations. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked Ethan, "giving up music?" He shook his head, his eyes distant with memory. "I regret how I did it, burning bridges, running away instead of being honest. But coming home, building this life with Mason, that's never felt like a sacrifice." "We're better together than we are apart," Mason added, glancing at his brother with unmistakable affection. "Always have been. Some people are just made to orbit each other." The way he said it, the weight behind those words, made me wonder if he was talking about more than just brotherhood. There was something in the dynamic between them, a closeness that went beyond typical sibling bonds. They moved in synchronization, finished each other's sentences, communicated with looks and touches that spoke of deep intimacy. It was beautiful and intimidating in equal measure. After dinner, we moved to the living room. I expected them to sit on the couch while I took one of the chairs, maintaining professional distance. Instead, Mason guided me to the center of the couch, and they settled on either side of me, close enough that our thighs touched. The physical contact sent electricity racing through my nervous system, and I had to work to keep my breathing steady. "Can I ask you something personal?" Ethan said, his voice low. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "When you look at us, and we know you do, Jamie, we've seen it, what do you feel?" The question was so direct, so unexpected, that I couldn't formulate a deflection. The wine had lowered my defenses, and the warmth of their bodies pressed against mine was overwhelming my ability to lie. "Fear," I admitted. "Wanting, confusion. I don't understand why you're asking me this." "Because we're tired of dancing around it," Mason said bluntly. "We've been attracted to you since the day you walked onto this ranch. The way you move, the determination in your eyes despite everything you've been through, the vulnerability you try so hard to hide, it's captivating. But you're so skittish, so convinced you're not allowed to have anything good, that we haven't known how to approach you." My heart was pounding so hard I was certain they could hear it. "You're attracted to me," I repeated stupidly. "Both of you." "Both of us," Ethan confirmed. "Jamie, Mason, and I have always shared everything. We've been in a few relationships over the years and they've all been together. We don't do anything separately when it comes to romance. It's both of us or neither of us." I should have been shocked, should have been uncomfortable with the idea of being involved with twin brothers simultaneously. But all I felt was a dizzying rush of desire and possibility. The fantasy I hadn't even let myself fully acknowledge was being handed to me on a silver platter, and I didn't know whether to reach for it or run screaming. "I can't," I whispered. "I can't be what you need. I'm still figuring out how to be a functional human being. I can barely take care of myself. How am I supposed to?" "We're not asking you to take care of us," Mason interrupted. "We're offering to take care of you, to help carry some of the weight you're hauling around. You don't have to have it all figured out, Jamie. None of us do." "But what if I relapse?" The fear burst out of me, raw and honest. "What if I disappoint you? What if I'm not strong enough to?" Ethan turned my face toward his hand gentle but insistent. "Then we'll deal with it together. Recovery isn't linear, and we understand that. We're not asking for perfection. We're asking for honesty, for you to let us in." "Why me?" I asked desperately. "You could have anyone. Why would you want someone as damaged as I am?" "Because you're not damaged," Mason said fiercely. "You're healing. And you're brave and determined and kinder than you give yourself credit for. We've watched you bond with the horses others had given up on. Seen you work yourself to exhaustion because you're terrified of being seen as lazy. You have so much capacity for love, Jamie, and you're wasting it all on self-hatred." Tears were streaming down my face now, and I didn't have the energy to stop them. Everything they were saying was tearing down the walls I'd built around my heart, exposing the desperate need underneath. I wanted to believe them, wanted to accept what they were offering with both hands and let myself fall into the safety of their regard. "I'm scared," I admitted. "I'm so scared of wanting this and having it taken away." "We're scared too," Ethan said softly. "That's how we know it matters. But we're asking you to be brave with us, Jamie. Take a chance. See where this could go." I looked between them, these two incredible men who saw me, truly saw me and didn't flinch. Who were offering not just desire but partnership, care, a place to belong. My hands were shaking as I reached for them, one hand for each twin, and let them thread our fingers together. "I don't know how to do this," I said. "I don't know how to be in a relationship, especially not with two people at once." "We'll figure it out together," Mason promised. "One day at a time. No pressure, no expectations except honesty." Ethan leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. "Can I kiss you, Jamie, please?" The please undid me completely. I turned my head and nodded, and then his lips were on mine, soft and questioning at first. Then deeper as I responded with all the pent-up longing I'd been suppressing for months. His hand cupped the back of my neck, and I made a sound I'd never heard myself make before, something between a whimper and a sigh. When we broke apart, I was dizzy and breathless. Mason's hand tightened around mine, and I turned to find him watching us with dark, hungry eyes. "My turn," he murmured, And then he was kissing me too, different from Ethan, more intense, more demanding, but equally devastating in its effect. I felt like I was being consumed and rebuilt simultaneously, like every atom in my body was rearranging itself around this new reality. We spent the rest of the evening on that couch, kissing and talking and simply being close. They held me between them, their hands in my hair and on my back, their warmth seeping into my bones. For the first time since I'd left rehab, I felt safe. Not just physically safe, but emotionally safe, like I could show them my worst parts and they wouldn't abandon me. Eventually, exhaustion caught up with all of us. "Stay here tonight," Mason said. "Sleep in the guest room, we just want you close." I should have declined, should have maintained some semblance of boundaries. But I was too tired to fight what I wanted, and what I wanted was to not be alone. So I let them show me to a comfortable bedroom down the hall from theirs, accepted the t-shirt Ethan loaned me, and crawled under sheets that smelled like lavender and home. I didn't have nightmares that night. I dreamed, instead of green eyes and gentle hands, of being held and wanted and safe. The next few weeks transformed my life in ways I couldn't have imagined. By unspoken agreement, we took things slowly, no rushing into anything physical beyond kissing and cuddling. But the emotional intimacy deepened with dizzying speed. I spent most evenings at the main house, cooking with them or watching movies while tangled together on the couch. They asked about my recovery, my meetings, which I attended via Zoom every Tuesday and Thursday, my daily struggles with anxiety and self-doubt. And they shared their own vulnerabilities in return. Ethan admitted to battling depression in his mid-20s, a darkness that had nearly consumed him before therapy and medication helped him find equilibrium. Mason confessed to panic attacks that still ambushed him occasionally, legacy of a violent assault he'd survived in college. They trusted me with their wounds, and in doing so, gave me permission to trust them with mine. The physical work continued to be demanding, but now it felt different. Mason would work alongside me in the stables, our shoulders brushing, his hand occasionally settling on my lower back with casual possessiveness. Ethan would bring lunch out to the fields, and we'd eat together in the shade of an old oak tree, his fingers playing with my hair while we talked about everything and nothing. The other ranch hands noticed the change, of course. There were only 3 of them, older men who'd worked for the Coopers for years, and they greeted the development with varying degrees of acceptance. 2 of them, Carlos and Jim, seemed genuinely happy for us. The third, a grizzled veteran named Hank, kept his opinions to himself but didn't interfere. In a small Texas town where acceptance wasn't guaranteed, I was grateful for their discretion. But not everything was perfect. The voice in my head that whispered I didn't deserve this happiness grew louder as the relationship deepened. I found myself sabotaging small moments, pulling away when things got too intimate, picking fights over trivial matters, testing the boundaries of their patience. Some part of me kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for them to realize I wasn't worth the effort. The breaking point came on a humid evening in early July. We'd spent the day working on a particularly difficult fence repair in the far pasture, and by the time we finished, everyone was exhausted and irritable. Back at the house, while I was helping Ethan make dinner, I accidentally knocked a glass off the counter. It shattered against the tile floor and I froze, staring at the glittering shards. "It's fine," Ethan said immediately. "Just a glass, Jamie, no big deal." But it felt like a massive deal. The glass had been part of a set that belonged to their grandmother, irreplaceable, and I destroyed it through carelessness, through not paying attention, through being the fuck-up I'd always been. The shame that crashed over me was disproportionate to the offense, but I couldn't control it. Before I could stop myself, I was on my knees trying to pick up the pieces with my bare hands. "Jamie, stop, you're going to cut yourself." Ethan reached for me, but I jerked away. "I'm sorry," I gasped. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to, I'll replace it." "Jamie, look at me." Mason's voice cut through my spiraling. He'd appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with those perceptive eyes. "Step back from the glass, now." The command in his tone made me obey automatically. I stood, my hands shaking, feeling like I might fly apart. Mason moved carefully through the glass and gripped my shoulders. "What's really happening right now?" he asked. "Because this isn't about a broken glass." "I ruin everything," I choked out. "Everything I touch, I destroy. And I'm going to ruin this too, ruin us, because that's what I do. I'm a disaster and you should have never." "Stop." Ethan was there too now, taking my hands in his, checking them for cuts. "You're spiraling. This is the anxiety talking, not reality." "How do you know?" I demanded. "How do you know I won't relapse? How do you know I won't steal from you or lie to you or—" "Because we know you," Mason said firmly. "We've watched you for months, Jamie, seen your character, your heart. You're one of the most honest people I've ever met, sometimes brutally so. And yes, you might relapse someday. Addiction is a chronic condition. But that wouldn't make you a bad person. It would make you someone dealing with a disease." "You can't know that I won't hurt you," I whispered. "You're right," Ethan agreed. "We can't know that. Just like you can't know that we won't hurt you, even unintentionally. That's the risk of caring about people, Jamie. There are no guarantees, but we're willing to take that risk because what we have with you is worth it." The certainty in his voice, echoed in Mason's expression, finally broke through my panic. I sagged between them, letting them hold me while I struggled to breathe normally. "I don't know how to believe that," I admitted. "I don't know how to trust that I deserve this." "Then let us believe it for you," Mason murmured against my hair. "Until you can believe it yourself. Let us remind you every day that you're wanted, that you matter, that you're exactly where you belong." They cleaned up the glass while I sat at the kitchen table, feeling wrung out and raw. When they finished, they made me tea instead of wine, something herbal that smelled like chamomile and honey. We skipped dinner and went straight to the living room, where they arranged me between them and simply held me, their hands stroking my back and arms in soothing patterns. "I think I need to talk to my therapist about increasing my sessions," I said eventually. "This is getting worse, not better." "That's a good idea," Ethan said without hesitation. "And we'll support you however you need. If you want us to come with you sometimes, we will. If you need space to process things alone, we'll give you that. Just tell us what you need." "I need this," I said quietly. "I need you both. That's what scares me so much. I've never needed anyone this much before." "Good," Mason said. "Because we need you too. This isn't one-sided, Jamie. You've changed our lives just as much as we've changed yours." I turned to look at him skeptically. "How? I'm a mess. What could I possibly give you?" "Purpose," he said simply. "Someone to come home to. A reason to leave the office early and actually enjoy our evenings. You've reminded us that the ranch isn't everything, that making space for love and connection matters just as much as the business. Plus," Ethan added with a slight smile, "you're incredibly cute when you're trying to pretend you're not affected by us. The way you blush when we compliment you. Devastating." Despite everything, I felt a laugh bubble up. "You're both ridiculous." "Maybe," Mason agreed, "but you're ridiculous and you're stuck with us now." The possessiveness in his words sent a thrill through me. I was starting to understand that being claimed by them wasn't about losing myself. It was about being given permission to finally be myself, fully and without apology. It was still terrifying, but it was also the most exhilarating thing I'd ever experienced. That night marked a turning point. I did increase my therapy sessions. And I was more honest with my therapist about my relationship with the twins than I'd been about anything else in my recovery. Dr. Ramirez, a compassionate woman in her 50s, helped me understand that my self-destructive patterns were rooted in a belief that I had to earn love through perfection, a belief that had contributed to my addiction in the first place. "Love isn't a reward for good behavior," she told me during one session. "It's a gift freely given, and you're allowed to accept it without having to prove you deserve it first." The concept was foreign to me, but I practiced it. When the voice in my head told me I was being too needy, I forced myself to ask the twins for affection anyway. When I wanted to pull away because things felt too good, I stayed present and let myself experience the goodness. It was uncomfortable and vulnerable and completely worth it. The physical side of our relationship progressed naturally. There was no rush, no pressure. They let me set the pace, checking in constantly to make sure I was comfortable. The first time we moved beyond kissing, a lazy Sunday morning when hands wandered under shirts and need built to an urgent crescendo, I was nervous enough to shake. But they were patient and attentive, guiding me through it with whispered praise and gentle touches. Afterwards, lying between them in their massive bed, I felt a peace I'd never known. Mason's arm was draped over my waist, Ethan's fingers were tracing patterns on my shoulder, and I was so thoroughly surrounded by them that I couldn't tell where I ended and they began. "I love you," I said, the words slipping out before I could second-guess them. "Both of you. I'm in love with you and it terrifies me, but I needed to say it." The silence that followed felt eternal. Then Ethan shifted, propping himself up on one elbow to look down at me. His eyes were suspiciously bright. "Say it again," he commanded softly. "I love you," I repeated, looking between them. "I love you both so much it feels like my heart might explode." Mason's hand tightened on my waist. "We love you too," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "We've been waiting to say it, not wanting to scare you off. But Jamie, we are completely gone for you. You're it for us." "Absolutely gone," Ethan agreed. "Obsessed, actually. Mason's been writing poetry about you in his journal. Bad poetry." "You said you wouldn't tell him that." Mason protested, but he was laughing. "You write poetry about me?" I asked, charmed beyond words. "Terrible poetry," Mason admitted. "But yes, you inspire terrible poetry and even worse decisions, like staying up until 3 in the morning just to watch you sleep because you look so peaceful." "That's creepy," I said, but I was grinning. "Probably," Ethan agreed cheerfully. "But you're stuck with us now, creepy poetry and all." Lying there with them, feeling loved and safe and completely accepted, I finally understood what Dr. Ramirez had been trying to tell me. This wasn't something I'd earned through good behavior or proved I deserved. This was a gift, and I was allowed to simply receive it with gratitude and joy. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I was genuinely happy. Summer bled into fall, and with it came new challenges. My sister, Meredith, reached out for the first time in over a year. Her email was tentative, carefully worded, asking if I'd be willing to talk. I stared at the message for hours before finally responding that yes, I'd like that. We started with phone calls, short, awkward conversations where we danced around the elephant in the room. Then she asked to visit, to meet the people I'd been living with, and I panicked. What if she disapproved? What if seeing me in a relationship with 2 men simultaneously shocked her, made her pull away again just when we were rebuilding our connection? "She's your sister," Ethan said reasonably when I explained my fears. "And if she loves you, she'll want you to be happy. We make you happy, right?" Deliriously, I admitted. "Then trust that she'll see that," Mason added. "And if she has a problem with it, we'll deal with it together. But you can't control her reaction, Jamie. All you can do is be honest." Meredith arrived on a crisp October afternoon, pulling up to the ranch in a sensible sedan. I met her in the driveway, my heart hammering. She stepped out of the car, and I was struck by how much older she looked. No longer the high school kid I'd disappointed, but a woman of 21 with serious eyes and an uncertain smile. "Hi," she said. "Hi," I echoed. We stared at each other for a moment, and then she was hugging me fiercely, her face pressed against my shoulder. "I missed you so much," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I stayed away so long. I was angry and hurt, and I didn't know how to." "Don't apologize," I said, holding her tight. "You had every right to be angry. I missed your graduation, Mur. I failed you when you needed me." She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "You were sick. Mom explained it to me, really explained it, not just the he made bad choices version. I understand better now. and I'm so proud of you for getting clean, for building this life." The twins had hung back, giving us space, but now they approached with welcoming smiles. I made the introductions with my heart in my throat. "Meredith, these are Ethan and Mason Cooper. They own the ranch. And there—" I hesitated, not sure what word to use. "We're together," Mason said simply, his hand settling on my lower back. "All three of us. We're in a relationship with your brother, and we love him very much." I braced for shock, judgment, discomfort. Instead, Meredith's smile widened. "Oh, thank God," she said. "The way you described them in your emails, I was pretty sure you were gone for them, but you kept calling them your bosses, and I wasn't sure if you were oblivious or in denial." The tension drained from my shoulders, replaced by surprised laughter. "You knew." "Jamie, you wrote 3 paragraphs about how one of them taught you to repair a fence post. You were clearly smitten." She turned to the twins. "It's nice to meet you both. Thank you for taking care of my brother when I couldn't." The weekend of her visit was a revelation. We talked for hours, about our childhood, about my addiction and recovery, about the year we'd spent apart and how to move forward. She met the horses, charmed the ranch hands, and fit into our lives with startling ease. On her last evening, she pulled me aside while the twins were cleaning up after dinner. "They're good for you," she said. "I can see how much you've healed since the last time I saw you. You smile more, you seem more grounded." "They saved me," I admitted. "I don't know where I'd be without them." "Maybe," she said thoughtfully, "but I think you did a lot of the saving yourself. They just gave you a safe space to do it. Don't sell yourself short, Jamie. You chose recovery. You chose to get help, to do the work, to let people care about you. That's all you." Her words stayed with me long after she left. I'd spent so long seeing myself as a victim of circumstance, as someone broken who needed fixing. But maybe I was stronger than I'd given myself credit for. Maybe survival and recovery were their own forms of strength. Winter arrived with unusual force, bringing ice storms that knocked out power for 3 days and tested our preparedness. We huddled together in the main house, keeping warm by the fireplace, rationing the generator for essential functions. It was uncomfortable and stressful, but also strangely intimate. With no distractions of television or internet, we talked and played cards and simply existed together. On the second night, unable to sleep despite my exhaustion, I found myself thinking about the year that had passed. 12 months ago, I'd been fresh out of rehab, terrified and directionless. Now I was lying in bed with 2 men I loved, in a home I'd helped maintain, with a future that felt possible again. "Can't sleep," Mason murmured from behind me. His arm tightened around my waist, pulling me closer against his chest. "Just thinking," I said softly, not wanting to wake Ethan on my other side. "About how different everything is now, how different I am." "Better different." "So much better," I confirmed. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real, that I get to have this." "Get used to it," he said, pressing a kiss to my shoulder. "We're not going anywhere, Jamie. This is forever as far as we're concerned." "Forever," I repeated, testing the word. It didn't scare me the way it once would have. "I can do forever with you." "Good," Ethan mumbled sleepily from my other side, apparently not as asleep as I'd thought. "Because we're keeping you." Sandwiched between them, warm despite the cold outside, I finally let sleep claim me. My last thought before drifting off was that maybe, just maybe, I'd found where I belonged. Spring returned with explosive color, bluebonnets carpeting the fields, trees budding with new life. I'd been sober for 18 months and working the ranch for a full year. The twins threw me a small party to celebrate both milestones, inviting Meredith and a few friends they'd made in the recovery community. During the party, Carlos pulled me aside. The older ranch hand had been the first to welcome me, and over the months we'd developed an easy friendship. "Wanted to tell you something," he said in his gravelly voice. "When you first got here, I didn't think you'd last a month. Thought you were too soft, too broken. But you proved me wrong, kid. You're one of the best workers we've had, and more than that, you're good people. I'm proud to know you." The praise, coming from a man not given to sentimentality, meant more than I could express. "Thank you," I managed, "for giving me a chance, for not judging me." "Everyone deserves a chance to start over," he said, "and you've made the most of yours. Those boys in there." He nodded toward where the twins were laughing with guests. "They're lucky to have you." "I'm pretty sure it's the other way around," I protested. "Nah," Carlos said. "You complete them somehow. They're softer now, more open. You've been good for them just like they've been good for you. That's how love's supposed to work, lifting each other up." Later, after the guests had left and we were cleaning up, Ethan pulled a small box from his pocket. "We have something for you," he said, suddenly nervous in a way I rarely saw him. Mason stood beside him, equally tense. My heart started racing as I looked between them. "What is it?" "Open it," Mason urged. Inside the box were two silver bands, simple, elegant, clearly meant to be worn together on one finger. I looked up, confused. "I don't understand." "It's not an engagement ring," Ethan clarified quickly. "We know it's too soon for that, and legally it's complicated anyway. But we wanted to give you something that symbolizes our commitment, to show you that this isn't temporary for us. You're our partner, Jamie, in every sense that matters." "The two bands represent us," Mason explained. "And they're meant to sit together, inseparable, just like we are, just like the three of us are." I was crying before I realized it, happy tears streaming down my face. "Can I put them on now?" I asked. "Please," they said in unison. I slid the rings onto my finger, marveling at how perfectly they fit. Then I was kissing them both, trying to pour everything I felt into the gesture: gratitude, love, hope, commitment. "I love you," I said fiercely. "So much. Thank you for this, for everything, for not giving up on me even when I was trying to push you away." "Never," Ethan promised. "We'll never give up on you." "You're stuck with us," Mason agreed. "Forever." That word again, forever. But this time, when I thought about spending forever with them, building a life on this land we all loved, I felt nothing but joy. As spring deepened into early summer, I found myself thinking about the future more concretely. I'd been taking online classes through the local community college, working toward finishing my degree. The twins had encouraged it, insisting education was important even if I planned to keep working the ranch. I was studying business and agriculture, thinking maybe someday I could contribute more to the operational side of things. One evening I brought up something that had been on my mind for weeks. "I want to tell my parents," I said over dinner, "about us, about the ranch, about everything." The twins exchanged glances. They knew my relationship with my parents was complicated, loving but strained, marked by disappointment and broken trust. I'd spoken to them occasionally over the past year, brief updates that stayed surface level. But if I was going to move forward, I needed them to really see my life. "Are you sure?" Ethan asked gently. "There's no rush." "I'm sure," I said. "They deserve to know I'm happy, and I deserve to stop hiding the most important parts of my life from them." Mason nodded slowly. "Do you want us there when you talk to them?" "I think I need to do it alone first," I admitted. "But knowing you're here, that I can come home to you after, that makes it possible." I called my parents the next day and asked if I could visit. My mother sounded so hopeful it made my chest ache. 2 days later, I made the 4-hour drive to their house with the twins' words of encouragement still ringing in my ears. My parents' home looked the same beige siding, the same carefully maintained garden, the same sense of suburban normalcy that had never quite fit me. My mother answered the door and immediately pulled me into a hug. My father hung back, his expression guarded but not hostile. Over coffee in their living room, I told them everything. About my job, about the twins, about the relationship that had healed me in ways rehab alone never could. I showed them photos on my phone, pictures of the ranch, of the horses, of me smiling between Ethan and Mason at various gatherings. My mother cried. My father was silent for a long time, then he said, "You look healthy, happy." "I am," I confirmed, "happier than I've ever been." "That's all we've ever wanted for you," my mother said through her tears. "We just didn't know how to help you get there. And when you pushed us away during your addiction, we felt like we'd failed you." "You didn't fail me," I said firmly. "I got sick. That wasn't your fault. And I'm getting better, but it's an ongoing process. I need you to understand that recovery doesn't mean I'm fixed. It means I'm managing my condition day by day." "We understand," my father said, "and we want to be part of your life again if you'll let us, on your terms." "I'd like that," I admitted. "And I'd like you to meet Ethan and Mason, to see where I live, to understand why this place is so important to me." We made plans for them to visit the ranch in a few weeks. As I drove home that evening, I felt lighter than I had in years. The conversation hadn't been perfect. There were still wounds that needed healing, still adjustments everyone needed to make. But it was a beginning. My parents' visit went better than I dared hope. My mother fell in love with the horses immediately, and my father spent hours talking to Mason about ranch management and sustainability practices. Over dinner, watching my two worlds come together, I felt a sense of wholeness I hadn't known I was missing. "You've built something real here," my father said to me privately before they left. "Something worth being proud of. And those men, they clearly adore you. They look at you like you hung the moon." "I look at them the same way," I confessed. "I can see that," he said with a small smile. "I'm glad you found them, son. I'm glad you found yourself." After they left, the twins and I sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. I was nestled between them as usual, their hands intertwined with mine, feeling profoundly grateful for this life I'd stumbled into. "Thank you," I said quietly. "For what?" Ethan asked. "For being patient with me. For loving me even when I was convinced I was unlovable. For giving me a place to belong." "You don't have to thank us for that," Mason said. "Loving you isn't a favor we're doing you. It's the best thing that's ever happened to us." "All the same," I insisted, "I want you to know I see it. I see how hard you've worked to make me feel safe, to give me space to heal. I don't take it for granted." "Good," Ethan said, pressing a kiss to my temple. "Because we plan on spending the rest of our lives reminding you that you're exactly where you're supposed to be." As the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars appeared, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The pain and mistakes, the darkness and struggle, the moment I decided to fight for recovery instead of surrendering to oblivion. Every step had led to these men, this land, this profound sense of home. I was still in recovery. I still attended my meetings, still saw Dr. Ramirez weekly, still had days when the anxiety threatened to overwhelm me. But I wasn't facing it alone anymore. I had partners who stood beside me, who believed in me even when I couldn't believe in myself. "What are you thinking about?" Mason asked, his fingers tracing gentle patterns on my arm. "Forever," I said, "and how much I'm looking forward to it." They pulled me closer, holding me between them as the night settled around us. Somewhere in the stables, a horse whinnied. The warm breeze carried the scent of hay and wildflowers, and for the first time in my entire life, I felt completely at peace. This was my life now, complicated and beautiful, challenging and rewarding, filled with love I never thought I'd deserve. I was the stable boy who'd arrived broken and desperate. And I'd been transformed not through magic, but through patience, hard work, and the love of two incredible men who saw my potential before I could see it myself. I was home, I was loved, I was enough. And every day forward I would choose this, choose them, choose recovery, choose the hard work of being present and vulnerable and alive. Because this life, messy and imperfect as it was worth fighting for. They were worth fighting for. I was worth fighting for. And that knowledge, more than anything else, was what would keep me steady through whatever challenges lay ahead. The months that followed were a study in quiet domesticity punctuated by moments of profound joy. We fell into rhythms, morning coffee on the porch, dividing labor across the ranch, evening meals that stretched into hours of conversation and laughter. The twins started involving me more in business decisions, valuing my input on everything from staffing to equipment purchases. I completed my associate's degree in December, and they threw another party, this one bigger, inviting half the county. Meredith came, bringing a boyfriend I approved of after a thorough interrogation. My parents came too, and watching my mother dance with Ethan while Mason and my father argued good-naturedly about football, I felt overwhelmed by how complete my life had become. 2 years ago, I never would have believed this was possible, I told Carlos, who was nursing a beer by the fireplace. That's the thing about rock bottom, he said. It's a solid foundation to build on. You've done the building, Jamie. Now you get to enjoy it. As winter set in again, I started thinking about long-term plans. I was 25 now, the twins were 30, and we'd been together for over a year and a half. I wanted more than rings. I wanted legal recognition, wanted to bind myself to them in every way possible, even if the law didn't fully accommodate our unconventional relationship. One snowy evening in January, I brought it up. I want to get married, I said abruptly during dinner. I know it's complicated with 3 people, but I want to figure it out. I want the world to know you're mine and I'm yours. The twins stared at me, identical expressions of shock on their faces. Then Ethan started laughing, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small box. "You absolute menace," he said, grinning. "You stole our thunder." "We were going to propose this weekend," Mason explained, shaking his head in amused exasperation. "Had a whole romantic evening planned." "I can act surprised," I offered, fighting my own laughter. "Too late for that," Ethan said. He opened the box to reveal a beautiful silver ring, more elaborate than the bands they'd given me before. "Jamie, we love you more than we thought it was possible to love another person. Will you marry us? Both of us, in every way we can make it legal and official." "Yes," I said immediately. "Yes, absolutely, always yes." They slid the ring onto my finger beside the bands, and I kissed them both with the sweet certainty of knowing this was forever. We'd figure out the legalities, maybe a legal marriage to one of them with a commitment ceremony for all 3, maybe something more creative. The details didn't matter. What mattered was the commitment, the choice we were making to build a life together. "I can't believe you proposed before we could," Mason said, still sounding offended but unable to stop smiling. "Technically, you proposed," I pointed out. "I just expressed interest first." "Semantics," he grumbled, but he was pulling me into another kiss. We spent the rest of the evening planning. A small ceremony in the spring, just family and close friends, on the ranch under the oak tree where we'd shared so many lunches. It wouldn't be perfect or conventional, but it would be ours. And that was more than enough. Our wedding day arrived on a perfect April afternoon. The oak tree was decorated with simple white flowers, chairs arranged in a semicircle on the grass. Meredith stood as my witness, and 2 of the twins' college friends stood for them. The local officiant, a kind woman who'd been honored to adapt the ceremony for our unique situation, stood before us with a warm smile. I wore a simple suit, as did the twins, and as I stood between them holding both their hands, I felt time stop. The officiant spoke about love and commitment, about family in all its forms, about the courage it takes to build a life authentic to yourself. When it came time for vows, Ethan went first. "Jamie, you came into our lives when we didn't know we were missing anything. You filled spaces in our hearts we didn't know were empty. You've taught me that strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up, asking for help, choosing to fight every single day. I promise to stand beside you through every fight, to love you in the easy moments and the hard ones, to be your partner in every sense of the word. I'm yours completely forever. Mason's vows were next. I've never been good with words, not like my brother. But Jamie, you make me want to try. You've shown me that vulnerability isn't weakness, that letting someone see all of you, the broken parts and the healing parts, is the bravest thing you can do. You inspire me every day to be more honest, more present, more alive. I promise to protect your heart the way you've protected mine, to love you fiercely and gently and eternally. You're my home. By the time it was my turn, I was crying. I looked at both of them through blurred vision and spoke from the heart. I came here broken and convinced I didn't deserve happiness. You proved me wrong every single day. You saw me, really saw me, and didn't turn away. You've given me a home, a purpose, a reason to keep choosing recovery every morning. But more than that, you've given me love in its purest form, patient, generous, unconditional. I promise to be worthy of that love. To keep doing the work, to stay present even when it's hard, to love you both with everything I have. You saved my life. Now I get to spend the rest of it showing you what that means. The officiant pronounced us married, all three of us, in the eyes of everyone who mattered. And when we kissed, first me and Ethan, then me and Mason, then the three of us in a tight embrace, I heard our guests cheering and felt a joy so profound it seemed to radiate from my core. We danced under string lights as the sun set, ate cake that Meredith had baked, laughed and celebrated with the people who'd supported our unconventional love. My mother danced with both twins, my father toasted to the bravest men I know. Carlos gave me a rare hug and whispered, "Told you it would all work out, kid." As the party wound down and guests began leaving, the three of us retreated to the house, our house now, legally and officially. We'd added my name to the deed the week before, making me a full partner in the ranch. Everything we had, we shared. Later, lying in bed with my husband's, the word still sent a thrill through me. On either side, I thought about the boy I'd been when I arrived here. Scared, ashamed, convinced his best years were behind him. If I could go back and tell him what was waiting, the love, the healing, the life we'd build, I wasn't sure he'd believe me. "What are you thinking?" Ethan murmured sleepily. "That I'm the luckiest person alive," I said honestly. "We're the lucky ones," Mason corrected. "You chose us, Jamie. You chose to stay, to fight, to let us in. That was the real gift." I turned to kiss him, then Ethan, pouring all my love and gratitude into the gestures. "We chose each other," I said, "and I'll keep choosing you every day for the rest of my life." "Forever," they said in unison, and I smiled into the darkness. Forever with them was the only forever I wanted. Epilogue. 5 years later, I stood in the same spot under the oak tree, watching a different ceremony. Carlos was retiring after 4 decades at the Cooper Ranch, and we were throwing him a proper send-off. At 30, I was now the ranch foreman, managing the day-to-day operations while the twins focused on expansion and sustainability initiatives. We'd tripled our herd and added a breeding program that was gaining recognition across the state. But more than professional success, I'd found something I'd never thought possible: peace. I'd been sober for 7 years. The nightmares still came occasionally, but they no longer controlled me. My relationships with my family were stronger than ever. And every morning, I woke up between two men who loved me completely, who'd proven day after day that I was worth the effort it took to build a life together. "Uncle Jamie," a small voice called, and I turned to see Meredith's daughter running toward me, her pigtails flying. I scooped her up, spinning her until she giggled. At 4, she was already fearless, and she loved visiting the ranch to ride the horses. "Hey, troublemaker," I said. "Where's your mom?" "Talking to Uncle Ethan about boring adult stuff," she said with exaggerated annoyance. I laughed, setting her down and pointing her toward the dessert table. As she ran off, Meredith appeared beside me. "She's going to be a rancher someday," she said, "just like her favorite uncle." "One of her favorite uncles," I corrected. "All three of us share that honor." "True," she agreed, smiling. "You know, when you first told me about them, I worried you were moving too fast, using the relationship to replace your addiction with something else to be dependent on. And now I see that you didn't replace anything. You built something new. You became someone new, someone whole, who happens to love and be loved by two incredible men. That's not dependence. That's partnership. Her words meant more than she probably knew. In the early years, I'd worried about the same thing, whether my attachment to the twins was healthy or just another form of escape. But time and therapy had taught me the difference. I could function independently, had my own interests and friendships and goals. The twins enhanced my life. They didn't complete it because I'd learned to complete myself. Mason found me as the party was winding down, sliding an arm around my waist. "You good?" he asked, reading my contemplative mood. "Better than good," I assured him, "just thinking about how far we've all come." "We've come pretty far," he agreed. "Speaking of which, Ethan and I have been talking about something. Don't freak out." I raised an eyebrow. That's a concerning way to start a conversation. He laughed. "We want to talk about maybe expanding our family, fostering or adopting, kids who need a second chance like someone gave you." My breath caught. We talked about children abstractly before, but this was concrete, real. "Are you serious?" "Very," Ethan said, appearing on my other side. "We think we have a lot to offer. A stable home, plenty of space, love to spare. And you'd be an incredible father, Jamie. The way you are with your niece with the ranch hands kids, you're a natural." I thought about small voices filling the house, about teaching children to ride and work the land, about giving someone else the kind of chance the twins had given me. It felt right in a way few things ever had. "Okay," I said, "let's do it, let's become parents." Their joy was immediate and overwhelming, and I found myself swept into a hug that lifted me off my feet. When they set me down, both were grinning like they'd won the lottery. "You're sure?" Mason asked. "It's a huge commitment." "I'm sure," I said. "We've built this incredible life together. Sharing it with kids who need it feels like the natural next step." That night, lying in bed with them, I thought about the journey that had brought us here, from broken stable hand to ranch foreman to prospective father. I thought about the young man who'd arrived convinced he destroyed his one chance at happiness, who couldn't imagine a future worth living. If I could tell him what was waiting, I'd say, "Keep going, choose recovery even when it's hard. Let people in even when it terrifies you. Trust that you're worth love, worth effort, worth the beautiful life that's waiting. Because I promise you, what's ahead is worth every moment of struggle to get there." "I love you both so much," I whispered into the darkness. "We love you more," they whispered back in unison, and I fell asleep smiling, dreaming of the family we'd continue building, the life we'd keep choosing, the forever we'd already begun. The end, or is it? Call to action. Speech balloon, did this story touch your heart? Drop a comment below and tell me which moment made you feel the most. Thumbs up, hit that like button if you believe in second chances and finding love when you least expect it. Bell subscribe for more emotional, heart-pounding LGBTQ plus romance stories that will make you believe in love again. 2 hearts.